The text message glowed on my phone screen like a neon sign advertising my wife's betrayal. Weekend getaway with Brandon. Don't wait up. Followed by a heart emoji that might as well have been a middle finger. I'm Nick Sullivan, 43 years old, owner of Sullivan's Auto Repair on the dying main strip of Millbrook, Ohio. 20 years I've been fixing other people's broken down cars, while my own life apparently fell apart without me noticing. The irony wasn't lost on me. My wife Carla had been acting strange for months. Late nights at the law firm, mysterious phone calls, new clothes that cost more than I made in a week. I'd chalked it up to her climbing the corporate ladder at Henderson and Associates, the fanciest legal practice our Rust Belt town had to offer. Turns out she was climbing something else entirely. Brandon Mitchell, junior partner, Harvard law grad, drives a BMW that costs more than most people's houses around here. I'd met him at a few firm parties, watched him look through me like I was invisible, just another blue-collar nobody, married to one of his colleagues. Didn't plan to, I typed back, then set the phone down on my workbench. The garage was quiet at 10 p.m. on a Friday. Most normal people were home with their families, maybe watching a movie or planning weekend activities together. But normal people weren't married to Carla Sullivan, apparently. I walked to the back office and pulled out the bottle of whiskey I kept for special occasions. This seemed special enough. The burn in my throat felt appropriate as I considered my options. 22 years of marriage, a daughter in college who barely called anymore, a house we'd bought together when we still believed in forever. All of it crumbling because my wife decided she needed an upgrade from the mechanic to the lawyer. The family locator app on my phone showed Carla's location at the Riverside Inn, the only romantic motel within 50 miles. She'd probably told her friends she was at some spa retreat, maintaining the image she worked so hard to cultivate. I finished my drink and made a decision. If Carla wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real game looked like. The drive to the motel took 15 minutes through empty streets lined with shuttered storefronts and foreclosure signs. Millbrook had been dying for years, but somehow it felt appropriate tonight. Everything was falling apart. Brandon's silver BMW sat in the parking lot like a monument to my humiliation. Even his car looked smug. I parked 3 spaces away and sat in my truck, engine ticking as it cooled, trying to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. The old Nick would have driven home, maybe confronted Carla in the morning, tried to work things out like a reasonable adult. But reasonable adults didn't get cheated on in seedy motels by Harvard lawyers who thought they were invisible. I reached into my toolbox and pulled out my pocket knife. Nothing dramatic, just a little automotive maintenance. 2 tires, right side, just enough to strand them until morning. Let Brandon explain to Triple A why he needed a tow from the Riverside Inn. The knife slid through the rubber with a satisfying hiss. Air rushed out like the last breath of my marriage. I moved to the front tire, repeated the process, then reached into my lunch cooler for the bottle of fish sauce my daughter had left behind from her last visit home. The BMW's air vents were easy to access. A few ounces of fermented fish oil would make every drive memorable for weeks. As a finishing touch, I placed a used condom wrapper, not mine. Found it in the shop parking lot, under his windshield wiper. I'm not a violent man, I muttered to myself, but wheels up means wheels off. The drive home felt different, lighter somehow, like I'd finally done something instead of just letting life happen to me. I pulled into my driveway and noticed Mrs. Grafton's porch light flick on next door. The old busybody probably had security cameras pointed at every inch of the neighborhood. Inside, the house felt empty in a way it never had before. Carla's presence had been fading for months, but now I could feel the absence like a physical thing. Her coffee mug in the sink, her magazines on the counter, her shoes by the door, all of it suddenly looked like evidence of a life that was already over. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Your hubby's out for blood. I stared at the message, wondering who'd sent it. Mrs. Grafton, probably stirring up drama like she always did. Or maybe one of Carla's friends, trying to give her a heads up. I poured another whiskey and opened my laptop. If someone wanted to play anonymous messenger, I could play too. Carla's social media was full of cryptic posts about new beginnings and finding happiness. Her friends' comments were all supportive, but I could read between the lines. They'd known about Brandon for a while. A notification popped up on Facebook. My daughter Kayla had posted from her dorm room. My dad's having a meltdown. #divorce drama #send help. The post already had 12 likes and 4 comments, all from people I'd known since she was born. People who were supposed to be my friends too. I closed the laptop and finished my drink. If they wanted drama, I'd give them something worth talking about. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I'd spent the weekend changing locks, boxing up Carla's belongings, and planning my next moves. The house felt different without her things scattered around, cleaner, somehow. Like I'd finally gotten rid of a mess I'd been living with for years. At 7:30 a.m., Carla's Lexus pulled into the driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as she sat in the car for a full minute, probably trying to figure out how to handle the situation. Her phone was pressed to her ear, calling Brandon for moral support, no doubt. She approached the front door with the confidence of someone who'd never been locked out of her own house before. The key card beeped red against the electronic lock. She tried again. Red again. Her face went through several interesting color changes. Confusion, then realization, then something that looked like panic. She pounded on the door with her manicured fists. "Nick, open this door right now." I opened it slowly, keeping the chain latch engaged. Through the gap, I could see her mascara had run slightly, probably from crying or yelling or both. "Morning, Carla. How was your weekend getaway?" "Don't be ridiculous. Let me in. This is my house too." "Actually, it's my house. Bought it before we were married, remember? Your name's not on the deed." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. In all our years together, I'd never played hardball with legal technicalities. She was the lawyer in the family, after all. "You can't just lock me out." "I'm not locking you out. I'm just not letting you in." "There's a difference." I handed her a cardboard box through the gap. "Your things are packed. I left out anything that looked expensive. Wouldn't want you to think I was stealing." She took the box with shaking hands. "Nick, we need to talk about this like adults. Adults don't cheat on their spouses with junior partners. Adults don't send text messages about weekend getaways. Adults don't lie for months while they plan their exit strategy. How did you— The family locator app, Carla, the one you insisted we install for safety. Turns out the Riverside Inn isn't exactly a spa retreat." Her face went white. "You followed me?" "I followed your phone. Technology's amazing these days." I closed the door and listened to her footsteps retreat to her car. Through the window, I watched her sit in the driver's seat, phone pressed to her ear again. Probably calling Brandon, or her lawyer friends, or her sister in Cleveland who'd never liked me anyway. The morning news played on my kitchen TV while I ate breakfast. Local weather, traffic reports, the usual small-town drama. In a few hours, I'd be the small-town drama. Word traveled fast in Millbrook, especially when it involved successful people falling from grace. At the shop, my assistant Tommy was already working on a transmission rebuild. Good kid, 25, married to his high school sweetheart, still believed in forever. I envied him. "Boss, you okay? You look like you haven't slept." "Marital difficulties, Tommy. Nothing that can't be fixed with the right tools." He laughed, thinking I was making a mechanic joke. If only he knew. By noon, 3 different customers had mentioned seeing Carla at various locations around town, looking upset and distressed. The Millbrook Gossip Network was more efficient than the internet. At lunch, I drove past Henderson and Associates. Brandon's BMW sat in the parking lot, still sporting my weekend modifications. The smell would be getting noticeable by now, especially with the weather warming up. I parked across the street and waited. At exactly 1:15, Brandon emerged from the building with 2 other lawyers, probably heading to lunch at the country club. He approached his car with the confidence of a man who'd never had his tires slashed by a vengeful husband. The first sign of trouble was his expression when he opened the door. The fish sauce had been marinating in his air vents for 3 days, and the smell hit him like a physical force. He stumbled backward, gagging, while his colleagues watched in confusion. "Jesus, Brandon, what died in there?" one of them asked. Brandon's face cycled through several emotions: disgust, confusion, then dawning realization. He looked around the parking lot, probably searching for whoever had done this to him. I started my truck and drove slowly past the group. Brandon's eyes met mine through the windshield, and I gave him a little wave. His face turned purple. "Sullivan!" he shouted, pointing at my truck. "You psychotic piece of—" I rolled down my window. "Problem with your car, counselor? I know a good mechanic." His colleagues were staring now, trying to piece together the drama. One of them had his phone out, probably recording. In 30 minutes, the video would be all over social media. Brandon started walking toward my truck, but I was already pulling away. In my rearview mirror, I could see him standing in the parking lot, fists clenched, while his expensive car aired out in the background. That evening, I sat at the Last Hand, the dive bar where Millbrook's working class went to forget their problems. Marty Kowalski, the owner, was an old friend from high school who'd done 20 years as a cop before buying the place. "Heard you had some excitement today," Marty said, sliding a beer across the bar. "News travels fast." Brandon Mitchell called the police, you know. Field a complaint about vandalism. I sipped my beer. Can't imagine what he's talking about. Detective Willis laughed him out of the station. Apparently Mr. Harvard Law couldn't prove anything, and Willis never liked fancy lawyers anyway. The bar was filling up with the usual Monday night crowd. Factory workers, construction guys, a few teachers from the high school. Normal people with normal problems. I used to be one of them. At 8 o'clock the door opened and Carla walked in with 3 of her friends from the law firm. They looked around the dingy interior, like they'd entered a foreign country, which I suppose they had. Lily Brennan, Carla's best friend since law school, spotted me first. She whispered something to the group, and they all turned to stare. Carla's face was a mask of controlled fury. They took a table in the corner, ordering wine that the last hand definitely didn't stock. Marty served them beer instead, which they accepted with the grace of people slumming it for the evening. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see the gestures, the sympathetic head nods, the occasional glances in my direction. They were planning something, probably legal action or a coordinated social media campaign to destroy my reputation. Around 9:30, Brandon walked in, still looking slightly green from his aromatic car ride. The reunion was touching. Hugs, air kisses, concerned murmurs about his traumatic experience. I finished my beer and stood up. The bar went quiet as I walked past their table toward the exit. "Nick," Carla called out, "we need to talk." I stopped and turned around. "About what? Your weekend getaway? Your new boyfriend? The locks on my house?" "About dividing our assets like civilized people." "Civilized people don't cheat, Carla. But I'm sure your lawyer friends will figure out some way to make it my fault." Brandon stood up, trying to look intimidating in his $1,000 suit. "You need to stop harassing us, Sullivan. What you did to my car was criminal." "What I did to your car? I haven't touched your car, counselor. Maybe you should be more careful where you park. Everyone knows it was you." "Prove it." The bar was dead silent now, everyone watching the confrontation like it was pay-per-view. Brandon's face was getting red again, and I could see him struggling with the urge to take a swing at me. "This isn't over," he said finally. "No," I agreed. "It's not." I walked out into the parking lot, leaving them to plan their next move. In my truck, I sat for a moment, watching the bar through the window. They thought they were dealing with the same pushover Nick who'd been fixing their cars and staying quiet for 20 years. They had no idea what they'd unleashed. Tuesday morning brought a restraining order, served by Deputy Willis with an apologetic shrug. Carla wasn't taking any chances after the bar confrontation. "Sorry, Nick, you know how this works." I read through the legal language while Willis waited. Standard stuff. Stay away from Carla, Brandon, their workplaces, their residences. The usual protective measures for people who thought the law could shield them from consequences. "Tell me something, Willis. You ever been cheated on?" The deputy shifted uncomfortably. "That's not really relevant here. Just curious. Because I'm wondering what you'd do if your wife was screwing some lawyer and then got a restraining order to keep you from talking to her about it." "I'd probably get a good attorney and handle it through proper channels." I folded the papers and handed them back. "Good advice. I'll keep that in mind." After Willis left, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and thinking about proper channels. Carla had always been better at playing by the rules, using the system to get what she wanted. But systems had weaknesses, and I was starting to understand how to exploit them. My phone rang. Kayla, calling from college. "Dad, what the hell is going on? Mom's posting all kinds of crazy stuff on Facebook. Your mother and I are having some difficulties. She says you've been stalking her and vandalizing cars. She's talking about getting a lawyer." "She is a lawyer, sweetheart. You know what I mean. A divorce lawyer." "Dad, please tell me you're not having some kind of midlife crisis." I looked out the window at my empty driveway, my quiet house, my life that had been turned upside down by a text message. "Maybe I am. Would that be so bad?" "Yes, it would be terrible. You and Mom have been together forever. You can't just throw that away because of some stupid fight." "It's not a fight, Kayla. It's adultery. Your mother's been cheating on me with a guy from her office." Silence on the other end. Then, "That's impossible." "I wish it was." "How do you know? Did you actually see them together?" I told her about the text message, the motel, the weekend getaway that wasn't a spa retreat. With each detail, I could hear my daughter's worldview cracking a little more. "Maybe there's an explanation," she said finally, but her voice had lost its conviction. "There probably is. Just not one that makes it okay." After we hung up, I drove to the shop and tried to lose myself in work. An oil change, a brake job, a transmission that had been making grinding noises for 6 months. Normal problems with mechanical solutions. Tommy was unusually quiet, probably picking up on my mood. Around noon, he finally spoke up. Boss, can I ask you something personal? Shoot. Is it true about you and Mrs. Sullivan? The whole town's talking about it. I looked up from the engine I was working on. What's the whole town saying? That she's been cheating, that you caught them at the Riverside Inn, that you trashed the guy's car and got a restraining order. 2 out of 3. I never touched his car. Tommy nodded like that made perfect sense. So what are you going to do? I'm going to fix this transmission. Then I'm going to go home and figure out what comes next. But I already knew what came next. I'd been thinking about it all morning, ever since Willis handed me those legal papers. Carla wanted to play hardball? Fine. I'd show her what hardball looked like. That evening, I sat in my truck outside the last hand, watching Carla's friends arrive for what looked like a strategy session. Lily Brennan, Sarah Chen from the prosecutor's office, Jennifer Walsh from family court, and 2 other women I recognized from firm parties. They'd chosen their meeting place carefully, somewhere they thought I couldn't go because of the restraining order. But the order only mentioned staying away from Carla and Brandon, not her friends. I waited until they were settled in their corner booth, then walked in and took a seat at the bar. Marty raised an eyebrow but served me a beer without comment. The women's conversation stopped when they saw me. I could feel their eyes on my back, probably debating whether to call the police or just leave. I sipped my beer and minded my own business. After 10 minutes, Lily Brennan approached the bar. She was a small woman with sharp features and the kind of confidence that came from never being wrong about anything. You can't be here, Nick. Carla has a restraining order. Carla's not here. I checked. Don't be cute. You know what that order means. I turned to face her. Actually, I read it pretty carefully. It says I can't contact Carla or Brandon, can't go to their homes or workplaces, can't threaten or harass them. It doesn't say anything about having a beer in a public establishment. You're intimidating her friends. I'm drinking beer. If you feel intimidated by that, maybe you should examine your own conscience. Lily's face flushed. We all know what you did to Brandon's car. That was pathetic, even for you. What I did to Brandon's car? I haven't done anything to Brandon's car. Are you accusing me of a crime, counselor? Everyone knows what? That his car smells like fish? Maybe he should clean it more often. Maybe he should be more careful where he parks. The other women were watching now, probably trying to decide if they should record this conversation. I finished my beer and stood up. Tell Carla something for me, I said to Lily. Tell her that 22 years of marriage taught me a lot about how she thinks, how she plans, how she operates. Tell her I'm a fast learner. I left them to their strategy session and drove home through empty streets. In my driveway, I sat for a moment, looking at the house Carla and I had shared for 2 decades. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. Inside, I opened my laptop and started researching. Henderson and Associates had a website with staff bios, client testimonials, and a detailed history of the firm. Brandon's biography was particularly interesting. Harvard Law, previous experience at a big Cleveland firm, specialization in corporate litigation, but something didn't add up. I'd met plenty of Harvard lawyers over the years, and they usually stayed in big cities where the money was better. What was a guy like Brandon doing in a Rust Belt town like Millbrook? I dug deeper, using search engines and social media to piece together his background. The Cleveland firm had let him go 2 years ago, no details, but the timing was suspicious. His LinkedIn profile claimed he'd left voluntarily to pursue new opportunities, but I'd heard that euphemism before. By midnight, I had a clearer picture. Brandon Mitchell wasn't the hotshot lawyer he pretended to be. He was damaged goods, hiding out in a small town where nobody would ask too many questions about his past. I closed the laptop and poured myself a whiskey. If Brandon wanted to play in the big leagues of deception, he'd picked the wrong opponent. I might be a small-town mechanic, but I understood how things worked when the stakes were high, and the stakes were about to get very high indeed. The town's annual Founders' Day celebration was scheduled for Saturday, complete with booths, live music, and enough gossip to fuel Millbrook's rumor mill for months. Perfect timing for what I had planned. Wednesday morning, I made a few phone calls. The first was to Detective Willis, reporting suspicious activity at Henderson and Associates, unusual after-hours meetings, possible financial irregularities, nothing specific enough to warrant investigation, but enough to plant seeds of doubt. The second call was to the Ohio State Bar Association, asking about the proper procedure for reporting ethical violations by licensed attorneys, hypothetically, of course. The third call was to my daughter. Dad, I've been thinking about what you told me, Kayla said. About Mom and that lawyer. And I did some research. Social media, mostly. There are pictures going back months. Mom and Brandon at firm events, restaurant check-ins, stuff like that. I never paid attention before, but looking at them now, what do you see? They look like a couple. The way they stand together, how they smile. Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you right away. You don't owe me an apology, sweetheart. This isn't your fault. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure everyone in town knows exactly who they're dealing with. Thursday evening, I attended the monthly meeting of the Millbrook Business Association. As a shop owner, I had every right to be there, even if I'd never bothered with local politics before. The meeting was held in the community center, with about 30 business owners discussing permit fees, zoning changes, and the upcoming Founders Day event. Carla wasn't there, but several of her colleagues were, including the managing partner of Henderson and Associates. During the public comment period, I stood up. I'd like to address some concerns about professional conduct in our business community, I began. The room went quiet. Everyone knew about my marital problems by now, and they could sense drama coming. As business owners, we depend on trust. Our customers trust us to be honest, to provide quality service, to maintain professional standards. When that trust is broken, it affects all of us. Margaret Henderson, the firm's managing partner, was staring at me with obvious concern. She knew where this was heading. Well, I've recently learned that some members of our business community have been engaging in behavior that reflects poorly on their professional obligations. Extramarital affairs between colleagues, possible misuse of client entertainment funds, misrepresentation of credentials and experience. Mr. Sullivan, Margaret interrupted, if you have specific allegations, they should be addressed through appropriate channels. Oh, I intend to address them through appropriate channels. I just wanted to give everyone a heads up that some of our most prominent citizens might not be as professional as they appear. Nah, I sat down amid murmurs and whispers. The damage was done. Doubt had been planted. Questions would be asked, and Margaret Henderson would spend the next few days wondering exactly what I knew and how I'd learned it. Friday morning brought a phone call from Lily Brennan. Nick, we need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. Carla might not approve. This is serious. You're making accusations that could destroy people's careers. I'm not making accusations. I'm asking questions. There's a difference. Meet me at the diner on Oak Street, 1 hour. The diner was neutral territory, public enough to avoid any restraining order issues. Lily was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee and a nervous expression. This has to stop, she said without preamble. What has to stop? The rumors, the innuendo, whatever game you're playing. Carla made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve to have her career destroyed. Carla made a choice, multiple choices, over several months. Don't minimize it by calling it a mistake. Lily leaned forward. What do you want? Money? A better divorce settlement? Just tell us what it will take to make this go away. I studied her face, seeing something I'd never noticed before. Guilt, desperation, the look of someone with their own secrets to hide. I want the truth, I said. All of it. How long has this been going on? Who else knew? What other lies has my wife been telling? I can't. Then we don't have anything to talk about. I started to get up, but Lily grabbed my arm. Wait, please. You don't understand the whole situation. Enlighten me. She looked around the diner, making sure no one was listening. The affair started 6 months ago. It wasn't planned. They were working late on a case. Things just happened. Things just happened. How romantic. Carla wanted to tell you, but Brandon convinced her to wait until after his partnership review. He said it would look bad if the firm found out he was involved with a married colleague. So this was about protecting his career, not my feelings. Both. Carla was going to file for divorce after Founders Day. She wanted to handle it quietly, without drama. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Without drama. She was planning to destroy our marriage, but she wanted to do it quietly. She still loves you, Nick. This isn't about not loving you. Then what is it about? Lily hesitated, then spoke in a whisper. Brandon promised her a partnership. He said he had connections, influence with the managing partners. Carla's been stuck as an associate for 8 years. She was desperate for advancement. The truth hit me like a physical blow. My wife hadn't just cheated on me for love, or passion, or even simple lust. She'd cheated on me for a promotion that might not even exist. Does she know about Brandon's background? Why he really left Cleveland? Lily's face went white. What do you mean? I mean your boyfriend isn't the hotshot lawyer he pretends to be. He was fired from his last job for sleeping with a senior partner's wife. Sound familiar? I left Lily sitting in the booth, staring at her coffee cup like it held answers to questions she was afraid to ask. Outside, the town was preparing for Founders Day, hanging banners and setting up booths for tomorrow's celebration. By this time tomorrow, everyone in Millbrook would know exactly what kind of people Carla Sullivan and Brandon Mitchell really were. Saturday morning dawned clear and warm, perfect weather for Millbrook's biggest social event of the year. By 10 a.m., Main Street was crowded with families, vendors, and local politicians working the crowd for votes. I set up my booth between the fire department's fundraiser and the high school band's bake sale. My sign read, "Sullivan's Auto Repair, honest service, fair prices." The irony wasn't lost on me. O'Carroll arrived around noon with Brandon and her usual entourage. She looked nervous, probably wondering what I had planned. The restraining order kept me from approaching her directly, but it didn't prevent me from participating in community events. At 2 o'clock, the main stage program began. Local officials gave speeches about Millbrook's proud history. The high school choir performed patriotic songs, and various business owners were recognized for their community contributions. Margaret Henderson was scheduled to speak at 2:30 about the importance of professional ethics in small-town business. I'd made sure she was aware of that timing when I'd called her office yesterday. "Ladies and gentlemen," the mayor announced, "please welcome Margaret Henderson from Henderson and Associates, who will speak about maintaining professional standards in our community." Margaret approached the microphone with obvious reluctance. She'd probably spent the morning trying to figure out how to address the rumors I'd been spreading without giving them more credibility. "Thank you, Mayor Williams. As business owners and professionals, we have an obligation to our community to maintain the highest standards of conduct." She spoke for 10 minutes about ethics, integrity, and professional responsibility. The crowd was polite but distracted. They'd come for funnel cakes and carnival games, not lectures about business ethics. When she finished, the mayor opened the microphone for community announcements. This was my moment. I walked to the stage, ignoring the murmurs from the crowd. Carla was staring at me with a mixture of fear and fury, probably calculating whether she could have me arrested for violating the restraining order. "Good afternoon, everyone. Nick Sullivan, from Sullivan's Auto Repair." The crowd settled down, sensing drama. In a town like Millbrook, public confrontations were rare and therefore fascinating. "I want to thank everyone who's supported my business over the years. Your trust means everything to me, which is why I feel obligated to share some information about professional conduct in our community." Margaret Henderson was frantically whispering to someone near the stage, probably trying to figure out how to stop me without making the situation worse. "Recently, I discovered that my wife of 22 years has been having an affair with a colleague at Henderson and Associates. Now, adultery isn't illegal, and people's personal lives are usually their own business." The crowd was dead silent now. Even the children had stopped playing, sensing the tension in the adult voices. But when that affair involves misuse of client funds for romantic getaways, when it involves promises of partnership in exchange for sexual favors, when it involves lying to professional licensing boards about past employment terminations, well, that becomes everyone's business. Carla was pushing through the crowd toward the stage, her face white with rage. Brandon was right behind her, looking like he wanted to disappear into the ground. "Mr. Sullivan," Margaret Henderson called out, "these are serious allegations that should be addressed through proper legal channels." "You're absolutely right," I agreed, "which is why I've already contacted the Ohio State Bar Association, the IRS, and the Cleveland law firm that terminated Mr. Mitchell for similar conduct 2 years ago." The crowd erupted in gasps and murmurs. Brandon had stopped moving toward the stage, probably realizing that drawing attention to himself would only make things worse. "Nick!" Carla shouted from the front of the crowd. "You're violating the restraining order." Actually, I'm not. The order prevents me from contacting you directly or approaching your residence or workplace. It doesn't prevent me from exercising my First Amendment rights at a public forum." Detective Willis was making his way through the crowd, probably trying to figure out if any laws were actually being broken. The mayor was looking back and forth between me and Margaret Henderson, clearly out of his depth. "The truth is," I continued, "some people in this town think they're above the rules that govern the rest of us. They think their education, their professional status, their social connections make them untouchable." I pulled out a manila envelope and held it up for everyone to see. This envelope contains copies of financial records, email communications, and employment history documentation that tell a very interesting story about professional misconduct at Henderson and Associates. I'll be distributing copies to anyone who's interested. Margaret Henderson stepped forward. "Mr. Sullivan, if you have evidence of criminal activity, You should present it to law enforcement, not make a public spectacle. Oh, I've already shared everything with the appropriate authorities. This is just community service, making sure everyone knows who they're dealing with. I handed the envelope to Tommy, who'd been standing near the stage. Would you mind distributing these to anyone who wants to read them? And the crowd surged forward, everyone wanting to see the evidence. In the chaos, I saw Carla grab Brandon's arm and pull him toward the parking area. They were leaving, probably to do damage control or consult with crisis management specialists. Detective Willis finally reached the stage. Nick, I think you've made your point. Maybe it's time to wrap this up. You're right. I've said what I needed to say. I stepped down from the stage and walked through the crowd toward my truck. People were already reading the documents Tommy was handing out, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust to vindication. The papers contained everything I'd discovered over the past week. Brandon's employment termination in Cleveland, financial irregularities in the firm's client entertainment account, email exchanges between Carla and Brandon that detailed their affair and his promises of partnership. All of it was true. All of it was legally obtained, and all of it was now public knowledge in a town where secrets were impossible to keep. At my truck, I paused to look back at the festival. The crowd was buzzing with excitement, people comparing documents and sharing theories about what would happen next. Margaret Henderson was surrounded by reporters from the county newspaper, trying to manage a public relations disaster. Carla and Brandon were nowhere to be seen. I drove home through quiet residential streets, past houses where normal families were probably having normal Saturday afternoons. My phone was already ringing. Reporters, lawyers, probably Kayla calling from college after seeing the news on social media. At home, I poured myself a whiskey and sat on my back porch, looking out at the lake that had drawn me to this house 25 years ago. The water was calm, reflecting the afternoon sky like a mirror. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number again. You won. I deleted the message without replying and turned off the phone. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Legal challenges, media attention, probably more restraining orders, and court appearances. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Carla had wanted to play games with our marriage, treating it like another legal case to be managed and manipulated. Brandon had thought he could use his charm and connections to take whatever he wanted without consequences. They'd both learned an important lesson about small-town justice. Sometimes the quiet guy in the corner is the most dangerous opponent of all. I finished my whiskey as the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Somewhere in town, Carla and Brandon were probably planning their next moves, consulting with lawyers and public relations experts about how to salvage their careers. It was too late for that. I'd played my last hand, and it was a winner. The game was over.